Failure is the teacher of life. It's hard to overstate just how profoundly important this idea is. If we approach it the right way, our failures can become the source of our greatest wisdom and strength. I think we have to destigmatize failure. We have to realize that everybody fails all the time, especially when they're trying to do something that's never been done before, and yet failure carries with it this sort of negative connotation. People don't want to talk about their failures. They don't want to admit when they failed at something or why they failed. They're afraid of being judged by others if they talk about their failures. They're afraid of being judged by themselves if they talk about their failures. We have to understand that failure is actually the teacher of life. Everything that we learn in life, we learn through our mistakes. So let me give you some examples of how failure has taught me things. Okay. One of the things I was really bad at early on in my career was public speaking. Public speaking is one of those skills where, if you want to get good at it, you have to get up in front of people and start speaking. The only way you're going to improve your skill is by getting out there and doing it. Early on in my career, I did a few talks here and there. I was not good at it. I was terrible at it. I stuttered. I forgot what I was supposed to say. I went off on tangents. I didn't engage the audience. I wasn't dynamic, and after every talk I would be devastated because I would see all these people in the audience with these looks on their faces like, "What is this guy doing up on stage?" And I would beat myself up over it. I felt like a fraud. I would go back to my room and I would think about all the things that I could have done better and all the things that I messed up on. But then, something interesting happened. As I got up more and more and more and I failed more and more and more, I started to learn. Every time I got up there and failed, I learned something that allowed me to be better the next time. And so I ended up embracing the fact that I was going to fail. In fact, I started looking forward to failing because each failure was teaching me valuable lessons that allowed me to be stronger the next time around. And it was only through that process, through that feedback loop, that I was able to become a better public speaker. So I want you to think about the things in your own life where you might need to fail in order to learn the lessons that will make you stronger. Maybe it's in your business. Maybe you need to try to launch a new product or service and you know you're going to mess it up the first time, but you can learn from that failure so that the second time you do it, you're even better. Maybe it's a relationship. Maybe you haven't been honest in relationships in the past and you messed that up. But if you're willing to be honest in the next relationship, you'll be able to learn the lesson from the last one and therefore create a stronger bond. In a sense, failure in the previous relationship actually helped set you up for success in the next one. So think about the different areas of your life where you may need to fail in order to learn the lessons that will help you succeed in the future. Another thing that I think we have to destigmatize is the idea of quitting. Quitting gets a very bad rap. When someone quits something, whether it's a job, whether it's a marriage, whether it's a business, people look at them like they're a quitter. And again, it's not a good thing to be labeled a quitter. But sometimes quitting is the smart thing to do. Sometimes you have to quit in order to succeed. Let me give you an example of this. When I was younger, I was definitely not very good at relationships. I would get involved with girls who were not right for me. I would get involved with girls who didn't share my values. I would get involved with girls who weren't treating me well, and I found myself in a series of relationships that weren't working out. Now, whenever I found myself in a relationship that wasn't working out, I would hold on to it for dear life. I would try everything I possibly could to make it work. And you know what? A lot of times it didn't work. Those relationships ended up falling apart. And I would beat myself up even worse than I would if I had just quit earlier. Because when you hold on to something that's not working, that's when you really start to suffer. That's when you really start to dig yourself into a deeper hole. So I eventually learned that sometimes the smartest thing to do is just to cut your losses. Sometimes the smartest thing to do is just to walk away and take that energy and put it towards something else. Think about the different areas of your life where you may be holding on too tightly. Think about the different things you're pursuing, where maybe you should cut your losses and move on to something else. The third thing I want you guys to think about is the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. This is a concept that Carol Duquette talks about in her book, Mindset. She talks about how some people have a fixed mindset, meaning they believe that their qualities are fixed, meaning their intelligence is fixed, their abilities are fixed, their talents are fixed, whereas other people have a growth mindset, which is the belief that we can change, that we can grow, that we can improve. And the beautiful thing is that we can cultivate a growth mindset. We can choose to have a growth mindset. So anytime you find yourself thinking, I'm not good at this, or I'm not talented at this, or I'm not smart enough, I'm not beautiful enough, I'm not whatever enough, then you need to ask yourself, am I practicing the wrong mindset? Am I having a fixed mindset in this moment instead of a growth mindset? Because if you're having a fixed mindset, you're never going to grow. You're never going to improve. Whereas if you have a growth mindset, then every time you face a challenge, every time you fail, you can use that as fuel to propel you forward. When I talk to young people, a lot of them tell me that they're just not good at school. They're not good students, and I always ask them, why do you feel that way? Why do you feel like you're not a good student? And they'll give me all these reasons. And then I'll ask them, have you tried studying? Have you tried studying more? Have you tried putting in the effort? And oftentimes they'll say, no, I haven't. Or even if they haven't done it consistently enough to really make a change. And so what I tell them is this: if you want to become a good student, stop thinking of yourself as a bad student. Stop labeling yourself. Stop limiting yourself, and instead start acting like the kind of student that you want to be. Start acting like the kind of student that you want to be. Put in the work, study, do the homework, show up on time, ask questions, participate. Because once you start acting in accordance with the kind of student that you want to be, pretty soon you won't even think of yourself as a bad student anymore. You'll just be a good student. So think about the different areas of your life where you may be limiting yourself by labeling yourself. What labels have you put on yourself that may not be true? How can you start acting in accordance with the person that you want to be? Finally, I'll leave you with this quote from J.K. Rowling. She says, "It is impossible to live without failing at something unless you live so cautiously that you might as well have not lived at all. In order to succeed, we must first fail. Failure is not the opposite of success. It's part of success. So embrace your failures. Embrace the fact that you're going to fail. Fail fast, fail often, and most importantly, fail forward."